Greetings, music lovers. Rick Ferguson, rickfergusonmusic.com. Thank you for joining me. It's lovely to see you. And I have in this video actually a viewer request, and I'm delighted. My viewer Valerie, thank you Valerie, has suggested that I explore in brief one of Chopin's 24 preludes for piano, specifically Prelude number 4 in E minor. And you know, this prelude is often one of the first pieces of Chopin that I will teach my students because it allows us to have a really interesting conversation about various types of time in music and the movement of time in music in various ways. And Chopin manipulates the movement of time so beautifully and effectively in this prelude that it's just a lot of fun to talk about. First, a little context for these preludes. Chopin composed them in a span of time roughly 1834 to 1839, very much as exploration of emotional and tonal qualities in each of the major and minor keys, and they are organized in that fashion: major key, relative minor key, major key, relative minor key, working through the cycle of the keys, based somewhat on the model that Bach had established in his Well-Tempered Clavier. And of course, you know, Chopin knew all of Bach's preludes and fugues extremely well, and apparently Chopin really loved the flexibility of the prelude in terms of its form. It would really allow him to explore in the context of either a short piece or a slightly more moderate length piece, the various qualities of these keys. And so in E minor, we have some really interesting illustrations of how one pianist of the time, Hans von Bülow, who would have known these pieces, you know, right off the press, firsthand essentially, he characterized this prelude as basically being suffocation. How 19th century is that? The French pianist, early 20th century pianist Alfred Cortot envisioned, and Cortot just loved the idea of really rich musical narrative and the creation of narrative through his own playing and you know, viewing the creation of music from a narrative standpoint. So Cortot envisioned the setting for this piece as being above a grave. So very effective, very poignant piece of music. There are a couple of things that I really love focusing on in this piece. And actually, at the end of the video, we will hear a performance by Cortot of the E minor prelude. So let's see what information Chopin gives us at the beginning. He marks the tempo largo, and so that is a very slowly evolving in terms of the basic pulse of the prelude. That's a very slowly evolving tempo. However, he also marks it alla breve, and so he's giving the half note the beat. And so the half note is getting the pulse as opposed to the quarter note. I think that's really important in this prelude, because if we're feeling the quarter note evolving slowly, well, that's going to be one experience, right? So quarter note moving sort of slowly, we're really going to be feeling those quarter note beats. But that seems not to be what Chopin has in mind. He wants the half note beat, right? So slowly evolving, half note beat. And so we have that basic framework, but there's a secondary type of time that we're thinking about. So we have metrical time, which is the movement of the half note beat at the slowly evolving pulse, but we also have harmonic time, which is exactly what it sounds like, the rate of speed at which harmonies are changing, right? And so for the most part, we're having the harmonic time either at the half note, two harmonies per measure, or the whole note, which would be one harmony per measure, but there are specific moments where all of a sudden the harmonic motion becomes much quicker. All right, so he sets up in the first measure harmonic motion at the whole note. So the entire first measure is just E minor. Then change, half note, quarter, half note, quarter. And so that's, I think, a key component really to explore when we're learning this piece within the regular structure of largo and alla breve. We have then the sensitivity of the rate of speed at which the harmonies are changing. Now, there's one additional element, which is the melodic material, of course, because there's a beautiful melody in this prelude. However, Chopin seems to be creating a form of stasis in the melody because he keeps reiterating the dominant, the B, right, for certainly the opening, and he revisits this idea halfway through. And it's such a slowly evolving melodic line. Right, almost in suspended animation, right? And he just continues with this alternation of dotted half, quarter note. And so that is the framework in which we're experiencing this prelude, right? Sort of this very gradual unfolding harmonically, melodically, very reflective. Then there are a couple of moments where the music, either depending on the pianist, expands, contracts slightly. I've heard it played in so many different ways. It's almost recitative-like, right? And so we're getting to the point where we have the sort of the dominant seventh in the four chord, and then the dominant seventh sort of halfway through. There's the 5-7. 5-7. So it allows the music to breathe, and then he starts again with what he did in the beginning. He cycles back around to it, but then we have the explosion in the dominant. And so we reach this point, and I'm sorry to take this out of context. We'll hear the full performance in a moment, but we have a movement harmonically in a slightly different direction, but he's still got the harmonic motion at the half note leading into this. So we've got half note, quarter, half, quarter. And so you have the manipulation of harmonic time that sets up this explosion in the dominant that then gradually quietens down. And I'm not going to do a spoiler because I want you to enjoy it when you hear Corto's performance. But it literally just fades away to nothingness. And at the moment that it fades away to nothingness, there is a pause. And then there are three final chords at the end that, from a certain perspective, leave me feeling somewhat bereft. And it's such a poignant moment. And all of this occurring in a very, very short span of time. It's so incredibly effective how Chopin is able to capture so much emotionality in such a short span of time and such a short piece. And so it really is a masterful work, just a fascinating work. So let's listen to Corto's performance of this, and afterwards I'll tell you why I chose Corto's performance, because there are umpteen million wonderful performances of this prelude, and I just wanted to share Corto's in this particular video, so enjoy. So that was French pianist Alfred Cortot playing Chopin's E minor Prelude. You notice there's some very interesting devices that apparently were all the rage, especially in latter 19th and earlier 20th century piano playing, taking certain liberties with what the composer writes, and especially for emotional effect, having a slight delay between where a melodic note, in this case in the right hand, where a melodic note would sound relative to the left hand chords, in this case, the left hand chords that it was supposed to be lining up with. Sometimes pianists would slightly delay that, and that was an expressive device of the day. For the most part, pianists these days would not be caught dead doing that. But I'm all in to exploring interesting historical approaches toward keyboard playing. And there was also, I think, the narrative that Cortot was driving and setting forth in the way that he approached this prelude. Which I find to be fascinating and really, really interesting and lovely to listen to. A little bit over the top, but in a short piece and a smaller package, I really don't mind that so much. So I hope that some of these ideas were interesting to you. If you know the Prelude, which I'm sure many of you do, I hope that gave you a little bit more information to consider. And if you haven't yet learned it and would like to, by all means, explore this piece. It's wonderful, as are all of the preludes of Chopin. So, thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching. If you have more requests, send them to me at rickfergusonmusic.com. This is so much fun to talk about. Take care. Be well. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.